I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello everyone, welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth and all that's told. Today I'm joined by Mr. Reginald Martin. He is a spiritual architect, metaphysician, and creator of Kametaphysics, the science of ontology for identity transformation and spiritual sovereignty. His work reveals how hidden operation systems, whether it's religion, culture, family, even leadership scripts, can quietly shape our sense of worth. At the center of paradoxal Heka, a master protocol that integrates inner conflict through breath, voice, energy, and symbolism, for therapists, psychologists, and coaches, Kametaphysics does not replace their methods. It reconnects them to the ancient foundation beneath modern practice, offering a way to accelerate and deepen transformation. His moments, not years, he shows how sovereignty becomes the foundation of lasting transformation. So, Reginald, thank you so much for joining me today, and I cannot wait to hear what you have for my listeners today.
Yeah, Noah. Hey, I'm excited to be here, and we can flow with this, and I can even give you some examples and some things that you can test out for yourself today. So this is a very, very powerful process. It's a shift for most people because we've been kind of taught to think in a certain framework that ends up being the foundation of a lot of the issues that we have in our lives mentally, relationship wise, financial, manifesting. A lot of times it's all because of one frame that we have difficulties with this, and man, we can solve that.
So, kind of delve deep into what Kametaphysics is and kind of a little backstory about how you found this practice.
So basically, metaphysics is the idea of really a system where instead of chasing wholeness, you start with wholeness as your foundation and your ground. Okay, so that's really a major shift from a lot of the ways that we're taught. And I can go back to how I even came up on this was through I grew up in with a very religious foundation. And that's one of the foundations that we're usually taught, that we're broken, we're sinners, we're unworthy, so there's a big, huge frame of what I call the ontology of brokenness that we actually operate from. But it's not just religion, it's even medicine, it's psychology, or a lot of times, the mental problems and stuff that we have, we look at them as a problem. We look at them as something that needs to be fixed. With medicine, it's the same thing. So all of it is kind of in a context of something's wrong with us. That's the bottom line foundation that we operate from. Well, I started to studying. I had a lot of questions about religion, and I grew up Christian, so That was my foundation. But a lot of it just no, it just didn't seem right to me. Something just was off, and I've heard people over the years when they do come in contact with my content, they do say, I knew something wasn't right, but they just couldn't put their finger on it. And a lot of times I end up voicing what they couldn't, you know. But in my instance, it started very early when I was young. So I just remember one of my first questions that I asked was to my mother, and I asked her, if somebody was that didn't believe in Jesus as their savior, was a good person all their life, did good, helped people, and then on the opposite side, you had a person who was, say, a mass murderer that did bad all their life, um, hurt people, and then on their deathbed decided that they were going to accept Jesus as their savior. So I asked my mom, I said, Mom, so the good person you're saying, if they say they don't believe in Jesus, they're going to go to hell. But the person that did bad all their lives, at the last minute, they could say they do and they'll go to heaven. And she was like, yep. No, that was pretty much it. So that even in my teenage mind in those years, that just something just didn't seem right about that. So it started me to asking a lot of questions, and just over the years to where once I went off to college, I decided I was an atheist, because I just didn't want to accept that type of an idea that somebody could be a good person and still not end up in a good place. That just didn't sit right with me. Started to study a lot of things, had a lot of questions. Fast forward to around 2005, 2006, I was reeling from a divorce that I had. I mean, just mentally, just down in the dumps. And then I heard the movie. I heard, well, my brother told me about. He came to me and said, "Hey, man, have you heard about The Secret?" And Noah, I was kind of like, "The Secret." I was like, "Well, no, I hadn't." So Noah, he started, to going into all of this stuff and, and talking, and I'm listening to him, and I'm like, well, dude, when are you going to tell me the secret? You know? And what I found was that he was actually talking about the movie, The Secret, you know? So about the law of attraction and stuff like that. So we kind of laugh about it now, but man, I was getting hot at him because he wasn't telling me the secret. He was going around about all this stuff. Well, one thing, led to another, and I had questions. So I started recognizing some similarities between certain scriptures and certain things that were taught in The Secret. And I said, you know what? There seems to be a commonality here, you know? And I ended up finding out about ancient Kemetic spirituality, which is an ancient African spiritual system from thousands of years. So we know it as the Egyptian system today, but ancient Kemet was like prehistoric Egypt. That led me to finding out about The Secret, but it ended up that I didn't know before I started studying. It ended up answering all the questions about my Christian upbringing that I didn't know. So all those questions about really that became a lot of dogmatic stuff that we are taught, I ended up finding out, and I like to say what I found out about Christianity is that what was new was not true, and what is true is not new. So, in other words, there are ancient spiritual ideas that underpin a lot of the stuff that was dogmatic that was built on top of it. So that's really how I ended up, and that was a short way of saying how I ended up coming across the idea of Kametaphysics and those foundational principles that I now teach.
So how does Kametaphysics give therapists, coaches, and practitioners tools that they can use immediately with clients?
Well, it's really it shifts. It helps because the a lot of the things that the psychologists teach, the therapists actually use, is really like fragmented ancient practices. Okay, so what I mean by that is that we talk about in psychological terms, especially like a Jungian psychology. we might talk about the shadow and the light. So the shadow parts of us and the light parts of us, the so-called bad parts of us and the good parts of us. Well, that is actually, coded in the ancient teachings that really became religion. That the foundation of it became religion because a lot of those ideas are actually ancient frameworks. So, but within psychology and therapy and stuff like that, it's like I was saying earlier, we are taught inside an ontology of brokenness. And what Kametaphysics and paradoxical Heka does is ends up giving a way that you can shift from brokenness to wholeness. And the foundation of it is showing you the ancient teachings and where they came from and how they helped us, rather than accepting what we're told is that ontology of brokenness. So it ends up being something you can use alongside of um, therapy and psychology, and something that you can fuse with what you're doing. So it can really help psychologists in a way where, and a lot of times they might do one of their modalities and it doesn't stick. And usually the reason why it doesn't stick is because it's like, if you think of our mentality as like an operating system, if you're operating from an ontology of brokenness, you're actually operating from a system that has malware in it. And if you can insert an app into that system, but the malware is going to end up taking over at some point. So that's why a lot of times the therapy and the psychology sessions that are done, they don't always last, or they just have a really difficult time with it. Well, Kametaphysics and paradoxical Heka changes that ontology to where you're operating from a system of wholeness.
So, from the people that you've have presented this finding towards, what's been the overall feedback you've received from, whether it's from therapists, from coaches, about this new practice that you have found?
Yeah, and it's mainly Noah, from people that I've helped with. So I constructed paradoxical Heka to help coaches and therapists and teachers, healers. But for years, I've been doing this to help others as well. So I've had a YouTube channel. I've been coaching people, individuals. But a lot of times, what I found is, and then when they've come to me, they are just like amazed at really the shift that they make. I actually had someone write to me. They came to me because of a friend of theirs that actually just saw some stuff on my YouTube channel, and they told me that that friend literally did like a 180. Like they were down in the dumps. They weren't getting along with their family. They were really just depressed. They were dealing with a lot of psychological issues because they were trying to live up to the standards of what their family wanted, but they couldn't, because of who they were. And they said when that person came to my channel and started watching videos and stuff that I taught, that person actually did a 180 and is now living their best life. So I know from experience, because I was my first customer in a sense. I needed this stuff, and I was my test subject. And I like to say I'm a scientist of spirituality, where it gets beyond just the woo woo stuff, and that's what a lot of times I detest the woo woo, where there's no identifiable process. There's really no identifiable transformation that you can point to. And Kametaphysics and paradoxical Heka is the opposite of that. There's processes and identifiable transformations that you can point to, and usually it's a life that you've learned to live in joy and peace. So that's the outcome that a lot of people end up having with this.
So, what does becoming a Kemetic physics practitioner equip someone to do that they couldn't before?
One of the things that helps them do is to shift a person from thinking like there's something wrong with me to using the idea of wholeness as their foundation. And what I mean by that is that from an ancient Kemetic perspective, in a religious context, from the Christian's perspective, we were taught that we were sinners, we were broken, and we were unworthy. Well, from an ancient Kemetic perspective, we're taught that we're all extensions of the divine. We're all extensions of one source. Okay. So that makes us divine by extension. Okay. That's a completely different shift, Noah. So when you're looking at yourself as divine, then or as whole, then you're that's a whole different way to think about yourself. So when something is off, there's not something wrong with you. You're not cursed. There's not something that that you're doing wrong or anything. The idea is that you have become misaligned. You have become vibrationally misaligned. And what that looks like is that our emotions, our internal states, when we're in emotional turmoil, when we're in emotional pain, we're misaligned rather than being broken. So that helps practitioners operate with their clients from a totally different paradigm, where they're not trying to fix them, they're trying to show them how to get back in alignment. And there's just consistent practices that you can use and processes that you can use to actually help them do that.
So you say Kametaphysics is about structure without dogma. Why is this so important for leaders and healers today?
Yeah, because again, the dogma ends up keeping you looped into that framework of broken. Or if you don't believe the dogma, then something's wrong with you. It's like you have to be inside this system in order to for the dogma to be accepted. So when you're talking about this non-dogmatic frame, what we're talking about is really giving um, ideas that are universal to us all, no matter what religion you believe, no matter what sex, orientation, all of that. It's something that's universal to humanity. And that to me brings in the connections that we have rather than the differences that we have. And you don't have to worry about offending someone that is open to a more universal way of thinking and a more connected way of thinking. So that helps practitioners in that they don't have to worry about offending their clients, or they don't have to worry about inadvertently indoctrinating their clients with their beliefs, because most practitioners are not trying to do that. They want to help the client. But if you're coming from one specific perspective, then indoctrination and alienation can occur pretty quickly.
So in your teachings, you have found that the cross isn't just a Roman execution device, it's more of a metaphysical symbol. What does that really mean exactly?
Yeah, so from an ancient science, metaphysics and spiritual science perspective, the cross is actually the four elements, metaphorical elements that actually a soul must you or a soul uses to actually cross over into the physical world. So, from an ancient metaphysics perspective, the metaphysical or non physical world is actually the real world that our physical world is projected from. Okay. So, in other words, outside of our physical body, we have an existence. That's a Kemetic frame, and that existence, religiously we have called it a soul. From my perspective, I like to call it essence. It's the source essence of who we are. All right. So from that perspective, the cross is the idea of how does a soul actually end up incarnating into a physical experience. So the cross, in that sense, becomes a tool or a symbol of how we actually end up in the physical world. So every human being is pinned to the cross or nailed to the cross. It's not about one special, specific human being. That was the ancient teachings before Christianity changed it and distorted it and made it about one special human being, when in actuality it's about us, all of us.
People have seen the sun be one of humanity's oldest soul metaphors. How does its symbolism appear in stories like crucifixion and resurrection?
Yeah, great question. Great question. Because if you think about the sun and the journey of the sun, so we're talking about in a 24-hour day, the sun goes from 12 noon and then it goes all the way around again to 12 noon the next day. Okay. So we're talking about a full circle. So the sun became the symbol for the light within us all. Okay, so we are sparks of the source. We are the light of the source, and the sun is the light of the world. It is also known as the Son of God. Okay, so using the sun as a metaphor, that is the journey that we take as human beings when we incarnate into the physical world. So we cross over and then we go through our dark night of the soul because we've forgotten who we were. So the death at the crucifixion is actually the ancient idea that we forgot who we were. We forgot that we were souls. That's the death. Okay. And then when you go through the dark night of the soul, that's when you're going through your darkest part of your human journey that you're dealing with. And then at some point you come back to the horizon on the east, and you rise, or you remember. Remembering is actually what they call resurrecting. So the journey of the sun. So when the sun rises up above the plane, the plane of the earth, or going into earth, and rises back up in the east again, then that is the reawakening on one level. So it's a multi-dimensional symbol for our journey and a symbol for us as souls.
For all this work that you've done, what do you hope from future people that study this new way of life? What's some main takeaways that you'd like people to know when it comes to kinemetaphysics?
Yeah, it's Noah. It is really the idea that, from a lot of our systems in society, they teach us that we need to conform to a certain way to be okay. We need to conform. We need to, believe. We need to accept. That you get a good job. You work all your life. You get a good education. And you work all your life, and then you'll get the dream. The dream life and stuff like that. And that usually takes some type of conformity that you have to deal with. Conformity usually ends up in a place where you are not living authentically as yourself. You're not being authentically who you are. And the way that you know that, Noah, is when from a metaphysics perspective, joy is the baseline emotion that you should be living with. Well, I won't say should, but that is the way that you calibrate if you know you're on your path or not. When you're living every day doing those things that you enjoy, then you are on your right path because you are aligned with your soul or your essence self. That's how you know you're aligned. When you're feeling something other than that, whether it be depression, anger, stress, when you're feeling something other than that, then that means you're misaligned. And you have to figure out how to get back in alignment. Okay. So if I can say to anybody, the you learn to live life on your terms, live life in a way that brings you joy. Find those things that you can do that you enjoy every day. Whether if you're on a job that you hate, that you're not having fun with, you're out of alignment, you know, and you're out of alignment because you don't like being there. If you're doing a job every day that you absolutely truly love, you cannot wait to get up in the morning, then you're usually aligned. Or you create a business. And that's what I know that society is going towards now, where no entrepreneurship is going to be the what's moving forward for a lot of people, because with ChatGPT and a lot of the large language models, it is becoming the age of ideas. If you can type, talk, or text your idea, you can literally create something that solves people's problems, and you can become an entrepreneur overnight. Well, when you're doing that, when you're doing things like that, that's living life from your joy. You know, you might be taking a risk because all of a sudden you might leave a job to go and start a business, but you're living life elevated from a place of joy and a place that you want to on your terms. That to me is the biggest thing that I want to help people understand is that you don't have to fit into somebody else's idea of what they think you should be. Live life on your terms. Create life from uh, your place of joy. Live it authentically, unapologetically, without guilt or shame, and have the courage. Excuse me. And have the courage to live that definition. Because when you don't fit everybody else's idea of who you should be, people are going to talk, they're going to judge you, they're going to point fingers at you. But as long as inside you're okay and you're living from your joy, they can be damned. You just keep living your life and you keep doing what you do to bring your joy.
I think people need to hear this kind of message every day because people tend to really judge you for anything. And I think it's really important that people stay true to themselves. And if it's something that, if this is a way that helps you heal and helps you grow and continue to live as a person, do that. Who cares what everyone else thinks? It's not important. As long as it's important and helpful towards you and is beneficial to you, that's all that matters. So I've appreciated you so
100% agree.
much. I've appreciated you so much for coming on here to share this kind of new way of life to my audience because with everything going on in the world right now, it's something we need. It's something that everyone needs
Yeah.
right now. And I can 100% um, agree that it's something that we need to all really take into consideration and mind. Um, if
No,
people
I
would like
definitely agree
to,
with that, Noah, because it really comes down to because things are changing so fast today.
mhm,
The world, there are businesses that are going to be, that can come up and be gone in 18 to 24 months. So it used to be that, my parents they could work on a job for 30 or 40 years. That we don't have that luxury anymore. If you have a career for 5 years you're going to be lucky. The way things change so fast. And if you don't have the confidence and the ability to be able to adjust, you're going to be left out in the dark. So it really is incumbent upon you, upon all of us, to really gain the confidence in our ability to really be creators of our reality. And when I say that we're creators of our reality, then that means that we're not waiting around for somebody else to tell us how to be or what to do. We literally take the bull by the horns and we can create life on our terms and not wait for every to fit into somebody else's idea of what life should be.
if people would like to follow you and would like to continue learning more about Kametaphysics and when if in general have people have general questions about this and would like to learn more, where's the best place that they can find you and most importantly support you and supporting your practice of what you're trying to preach?
Yeah, they can come to, and I don't like to say preach, no. So that's my old religious ideas, preaching and stuff. No, but I get what you're saying. I'm just poking. But they can reach me at reginaldmartin.substack.com, and that's the quickest place. And if you are a practitioner, I actually have a couple of downloads that you can, if you go there, you can get, and one of them is about the foundation of human transformation, and the other one is the woo woo checklist. And what I call woo woo is the spirituality. Nobody can explain it. It has no processes. It's just something just out there. I don't like woo woo, so I like science. But reginaldmartin.substack.com is the place to go.
I'll put all of his links in the description box below if you would like to maybe check out his website as well as his social media accounts. I'll put all these links down there below so it's easy access for you guys to have. Reginald, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with my audience. It was a pleasure to having you on here, and hopefully my listeners, you took something from it. So thank you, Reginald, so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, Noah. It was great to be here. Great to talk with you.
If you would like to follow me on social media as well, to my listeners, feel free to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Lethal Venom Podcast, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast. And as always, feel free to follow Lethal Venom wherever you get your podcast from. It's on all the major platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora. It's everywhere. So feel free to subscribe and follow the podcast so you get notified of when new episodes come out. Thank you to everyone for tuning in to today's episode. Hope y'all all have a great rest of your day and week. Be safe, make good decisions, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Lethal Venom.